What's up, guys? Welcome to Wagwa Friends English, and today we're going to do 25 English phrasal verbs that describe traveling.
Right. So being English teachers, we have traveled to many different countries, and going to those countries, you use a lot of phrasal verbs.
Yes. Anytime that you're going to have a lot of movement or motion, going place to place in time or space, phrasal verbs are going to be very important because prepositions are important here. But the thing about phrasal verbs is that they combine with a verb and the meaning is different. You cannot use just the verb, and you also cannot use just the preposition. You need both together as a unit to make the sentence make sense.
Right, and a lot of them create meaning that otherwise would not even have been able to be communicated by using both those two parts together.
Yes, absolutely. So these are very, very important, and why they're such a big part of our channel now, because English phrasal verbs are really difficult to learn.
Right.
And we have found in our own language learning journeys that it is much easier to learn phrasal verbs in context.
Right.
I know these are a lot, like 25 is a lot of vocabulary words to learn in one video, but this is a video and it's free. So you can watch it again and again if you need to. Take notes, do what you need to use this tool in order to be able to communicate accurately in context, especially like today, in traveling.
Generally speaking, we're going to follow the itinerary of when you travel. So the first step is you have to prepare or plan to travel.
The first thing you might want to describe what you bring is something that you bring along. And usually this goes along with things that are alive, like your children or your family members.
Or your pets. Do you bring along your pet when you travel? The next one is brush up. So this is a good one because people can use it for two different things. Brush up on history of maybe the place that you're going to, or brush up on the language that you hopefully are going to try to communicate a little bit on. Maybe you're not going to be an expert, but just kind of learning a little bit more.
And it has a little bit to do with you know something already.
Right.
So to brush up on something means you already had it. It's this idea of polishing up, like polishing something to make it look nicer and newer and be relevant again.
Yeah.
We do the same thing with study skills. Because we've studied Mandarin before, if I were to go back to China, I would need to brush up on my Mandarin.
Right.
Since most of us have an education, we've likely heard the history or a brief history of many countries or areas, regions around the world. So to brush up on your history is still a very accurate phrase to use.
Right. Another good one when you're preparing for a trip is to count down. Count down the days to go until you have no more work, until you don't have to write any more emails. You can just relax.
Yeah, it's interesting. We can use this as an adjective too. You can download a countdown widget on your phone or app on your phone or your computer in order to be able to count down the days.
Right. The next one is very interesting because it's get away. Like, I need to get away. I want to get away from all this stress. But it's also a noun meaning vacation. It's a getaway.
Yeah, or you can use it as an adjective, like a getaway venue or getaway like cabin, a getaway place. How much this pops into different parts of speech in English because we really want to get away, apparently.
Yeah, apparently.
The next one is allow for. And this is to allow for things like delays or troubles, things that might put a kink in your plans.
Yeah, or for budgeting as well. Like, you need to allow, when you travel, you need to allow for some
miscellaneous expenses.
Right. So after you've prepared to leave, then you actually do the leaving. So that's the second part of the journey, is to actually leave. Yes,
which we have a lot of phrasals for that. So the first thing you need to do is just be up at a certain time. A lot of flights that are cheaper are really early in the morning.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're up in time for those. So I would say that I want to be up at a certain time.
Yeah.
So at is normally used with this one, but it doesn't always have to. So just make sure that you're going to be up.
Yeah.
If I put it at the end of the sentence, I don't need at. But we like to use at or a prepositional phrase of time beginning with at, right up against, be up. I need to be up at 4.
So the next one is flag down. So flag down means to like get a taxi that's driving past you. Maybe you need to go to the airport. There's a taxi that's going to the airport. You have to flag him down. You have to wave or whistle or something. Get that taxi that's driving by to stop by you. It's kind of an older thing now.
Yeah.
Now you use something like Uber or whatever. Like, you use an app. But you still need to flag down something to help you, like a bus or something like that. When it's already already prearranged, like Uber or like a plane. You don't flag down the plane. You get into the car or whatever.
Right. The next one is to buckle up. And you do this in whatever mode of transportation that you're in that requires buckling up.
Right.
So even if it's like a harness, like in a helicopter, you're still going to say buckle up. If you're getting into a car, you're going to buckle up.
It's so funny. Like some city buses don't even have seatbelts.
Yeah, or school buses.
Yeah, they're fine.
We use this term also in terms of car seats. We buckle up our children, even though it's in a big harness.
The next one is carry on. And this one, again, is very interesting because it has two meanings. So to carry something like service animal, you'd have to carry a service animal onto a plane. But you also have a carry-on, which is an item, a small piece of luggage that you can take onto the plane just in case something happens to your luggage below, for example.
Right. Well, and like many phrasal verbs that have a noun form, it also has an adjective form, a carry-on bag.
Or a carry-on item.
Yeah, it's describing the item or the bag.
The next one is a little bit more formal. It's to be out. So if somebody calls for me while I'm gone, they would say, oh, he's out of the office or something like that. He's out of town. He is out of town.
Right. But if we're meaning it in a future sense, and somebody can say, hey, are you ready for that meeting next Tuesday? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to be out of the office on a trip. Yeah. So that's one of those things that to be out on something it's more of the passive voice. So it is reserved for a specific context, but it's really on its way out. So it's one of those that's still used enough in a business context. You should probably consider using it and adding it to your vocabulary, but also be aware that in informal conversation, we're not really using it that often.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that to my friend. I'm going to be out of the house for the week. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's more of an business email thing.
So the action of a plane when it leaves the ground is called to take off.
Yeah, so we can say taking off with gerund in that phrasal and making it more of a noun in that instance, or we can say the plane is taking off. Like is taking off is a verb form.
Yeah, so sometimes you might talk to your friend and say, hey, my plane is taking off at 4 p.m. So that's the last time I'm going to be able to get any cell reception. So after that, if you don't hear me for a while, it's totally normal. Don't freak out.
The next section has to do with arrivings and arrivals. So when your plane comes in, well, that's the phrasal verb. It comes in, or the plane came in, or it landed. So there's a range of meaning here. It can mean it came in as in it landed at this time, or it can mean it came in as in it's already taxied around and gotten to the terminal and people are getting off now. Yeah. So the timing here is a little bit of a gray area for what exactly we mean by when did the flight come in, but this is a phrasal that we do use.
Which is why we make these videos, because honestly, if you looked it up in the dictionary, it would have a very specific measurable time, but sometimes that they have that gray area of this is to land the plane. So what does it mean by a plane comes in at this time? Yeah.
Yeah, just point. Don't feel bad because we don't really know. Honestly, the next question is naturally, so what time did you land? Or what time did you get off the plane?
Right, because it takes time to go through customs, to go through all the things, and to actually say, what time did you actually get into the country is another whole separate question.
So the next one is easy. It goes both ways. You either check into something or you check out of something. And we also call it check in or check out.
Right. And this is the phrasal verbs that people think of when they think of traveling. You check into a hotel, you check out of the hotel.
Right. Because it's a place with rooms that you're going into. You're going into the rooms, which is why we use into. But to check in, you check in at the desk. You're not going into the desk. Right. So make sure you're remembering with your prepositions, think of space. We are very concerned about space, and time sometimes is considered a space. So you might check into a certain appointment.
Yeah.
You will not check into an appointment unless the appointment has to do with a room that you are going into, and everybody contextually understands that, in which case you can say checking into an appointment. So I'm sorry, but English is difficult.
The last one in this section of actually arriving in the country is to book into. So this is kind of like check into, but it's before you actually get there, you have to book a hotel or book into a hotel. So I could say, like, I booked us into the nicest hotel in the city.
Yeah. And that's the case that we would use it as Americans. I think this is more common in other types of English around the world. But we prefer as Americans to just say check into, as in physically getting there. And I would just say I booked a hotel.
Right.
Or I booked a flight. But I can see how some Englishes around the world have developed this idea of booking into. They've turned it into a phrasal verb. So it is not wrong.
Yeah.
It's just the way English is evolving. And I do think that one's going to catch on over time. But currently, Americans prefer check into or to book.
Yeah.
So the next section, we're going to start with activities.
Yes. So these are things that you actually do when you're actually in the place that you're going to travel to. So the first one is to chill out.
Yes. This is the whole reason for travel, to see new things, but also to chill a little bit and to rest from the mundane or resting from the usual everyday things you always have to do, like working and cooking and eating and sleeping on a regular schedule. For some reason, we want to go hike mountains, and that's the way we chill out.
The idea is, like you said, just resting. And this is a favorite one for Americans, especially. Informally, we love to say chill out.
Or to command somebody, hey, chill out, man.
Yeah, chill out, calm down.
You need to calm down. So the next one is to bump into. Now, we would use this anytime that we're referring to running into somebody. And I don't mean physically like running into or bumping into them, but that is the term. But what we mean is like, I unexpectedly met an old friend on the other side of the world while I was traveling. Like, it's the odds of it happening, and we describe it as bumping into. It's funny because it's a common movie trope to have characters like run into each other, and that's how they meet each other. I literally bumped into you is the idea.
I knew you from high school or whatever, and then they fall in love. They literally bumped into each other, but they also figuratively bumped into each other.
Right. So just keep in mind, this one is not necessarily a physical impact,
right?
But it could be used the same way to describe that. Like, my kids will sometimes get mad at each other, and it's because they bumped into each other or they ran into each other. And so run into somebody is another thing that we would say.
Bump into, run into, kind of the same thing. The next one is probably one of my favorite, which is to come across something. Come across a favorite restaurant, or come across a really small venue or site or little small hotel that's really nice. Like, that's one of the joys, in my opinion, of actually traveling, is to come across these kind of jewels, across these like small wonders.
Yeah, it's to discover by accident.
Right.
Is what we mean by come across. It means I was not intending to. I was going over there, but I came across something on the way. I discovered something on the way. So it's totally by accident, this one. This is something else that we were just discussing, is like, you can come across as rude. Like, you can unintentionally communicate a feeling or a meaning that you did not intend to mean. And we would say that is coming across to someone. So if I said, hey, Josh, can you please do the dishes? He might understand me as saying like, whoa, you're coming across really rude, or you're very direct. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. My intention was, can you please do this?
Right.
And trying to be polite, hey, we need to do this so that we can do other things. But maybe in my stress and thinking ahead about other things, maybe I came across rude.
Well, and also this happens when you travel all the time, because they have different like rules, social rules, and there's just all kinds of things where you come across differently than you want to.
You need to be careful with how you come across to the people you're visiting.
Right.
The next one is checkout, which we're doing again in this section because we use this to mean like to discover or to investigate. Checkout has very much of an intentional, this is a planned thing that I'm planning to go see, so I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah, and there might be an additional trip that comes up later where you go back to the same place. So like, if my family is taking a big vacation to a small country or a hotel or whatever, I might go first earlier to check it out to make sure that it's good. That's a good place, good venue.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
The next section is incidental. So when you're traveling, things do not always happen according to plan. And so we have to allow for incidentals.
And one of the best ways to do this is to ask around. So if you happen to speak the local language, or if you have English, maybe somebody around there is going to be able to speak English as well. In which case, you can ask around to find more information. Now, ask around has this idea, you're asking more than one person.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot ask around to one person. If you talk to 3 or more people trying to get an answer to a question, that is asking around.
Yeah, so like when you travel, you often have to ask around. Like, you may not know exactly where the hotel is, so you have to...
Right.
We've done this multiple times where we got to the place and it wasn't exactly where we thought it was, and so we had to ask around to try to find our hotel.
Absolutely.
Another one that's kind of a little bit more rare is blew in, or to blow in, and that means like specifically with bad weather. Yeah. So sometimes you can make all the plans you want, you can have the perfect itinerary, but sometimes bad weather blows in and it cancels a lot of things that you were hoping to do.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
So along with that is when bad weather blows in, then maybe your plans fall through. And fall through, or to fell through in the past, is a great way to explain when plans just don't come together. This could be any reason. It could be that somebody didn't show up. It could be that there was a complete and utter misunderstanding. It could be bad weather blew in. It could be all kinds of things. But whatever it is, and for whatever reason, you can describe those unmet expectations or plans as having fallen through.
Right. Personally, we experienced this. We had bad weather blew in, and we were scared that our plans were going to fall through because we were supposed to catch a ferry. But thankfully, we were able to still make it on the ferry. The last one, and it was rough seas, but we made it. The worst thing to have to do on vacation or trips or a getaway is to call off the plans.
Yeah, and this happens if there's just no way to get around it. There's no way to work around the problems. There's no way to reschedule. It would just be either too expensive or it doesn't fit the time frame you have.
Right.
It just means that you just have to call off the whole thing or call off a large sum of what it is.
Right.
You're not going to say call off, well, I called off lunch.
Yeah.
Well, in the case of vacations, it's either something that impacts several people or it's something that impacts a series of events.
Right.
So if the one domino falls and you can fix that one, but the second one means none of the others can happen, then all of those plans might need to be called off in hopes of making a better plan later. The last one is the return, coming back home after the vacation. And to come back is a phrase that we would use. We can also say return from.
Yeah. So to come back, return from, either way, you were at the fun thing and you were at your vacation, you were at the getaway, but time moves on, so you have to come home sooner or later.
And this is a very physical thing. To return from somewhere or to come back from somewhere is a very physical thing.
Yeah. So when you do actually make it back to your house, you have to catch up on a lot of the work that maybe was missing while you were gone. Emails. That's the worst part.
You have to sit there for hours just to catch up from the few days that you were gone, right? So this is to catch up.
And then to actually measure the time, especially the time, is to say we get to get back. So we didn't get back until 10 p.m.
That one's a specific one. Get back until, because you're referring to a time. Remember before we were talking about be up at a specific time. Well, we also say get back at. So notice that at here is going to be the preposition of time that we use in these cases.
So there you go, guys. Those are our 25 phrasal verbs of traveling. And we hope that it actually is really helpful because when you travel, you are going to encounter a lot of English. Even something simple like buckle up, you'll hear that every time you get on the plane is buckle up for safety or make sure you're buckled up.
Yes. So take these phrasal verbs, learn them, internalize them, and try to apply them to a past vacation memory or travel memory, even if you're going the next town over. Try to think about, sit down and write out or sit down and speak. Maybe you can record it on your phone, but try to describe using phrasal verbs the series of steps you had to take.
Right.
This is a great way to work through and apply directly what you have heard today and what you may hear a few more times if you need to rewatch some of this. But it is very, very important that when you learn something in English from English videos, don't go to the next video. Sit there and utilize what you just heard, because that's the way that you apply these things.
Right. When you have to have some form of repetition, practice, reinforcement for you to actually be able to remember so many vocabulary terms in the same lesson. We understand that. We recognize that. That's what's great about YouTube, is that you guys can do these multiple times. You can listen to it whenever and however many times you want.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.